Hello, guys, we are live. My mic was muted and I was just speaking. This is strange. Anyway, we will be waiting for a couple of minutes. Okay, cool. Joy is here. Hi, Joy, good morning.
Can you hear me? Cool.
How's everything going?
I am doing well. How about yourself, Needy?
All good from my side as well. Thank you. We will be waiting for a few minutes. I mean, it's 10:01. We'll be waiting till 10:03. So,
No worries.
to let the people join in, and let me share it with the devs community so they don't miss out this one. How much excited you are for this another workshop in the series of our work?
Oh man, this one's gonna be great. It's gonna be a little technical. I will
Yeah,
preface that, but the more technical things are, the more possibilities and the greater sense of enjoyment I tend to get out of these things. So if you guys are building out your apps and you love the nitty gritty, this is the workshop for you. This is gonna be so much fun.
yeah, definitely. So we are doing the series of workshops. I mean, for most probably like every week on the same time. We try to do on the same time. I mean, on this every Friday, but sometimes it happens that we move to the different dates. But all good.
Hey, that's what the recordings are for, right? So if
Yeah,
anyone ever misses, they can go back into the recording and still
yeah,
get all of this great content. So
yeah. Let me mention that we have done. I mean, if I'm not wrong, then 4 to 5 workshops with the third web, right? If I'm not wrong.
yep, exactly.
But
Yeah.
yeah. But we have done like 4 to 5 workshops with the third web, and all the recordings are on the YouTube as well as on the Twitter. But finding on the YouTube would be easier. So we have done Telegram mini app account abstractions, simplifying Web3, and
We've talked about
there
wallets.
were the last one was, yeah, we talked about wallets. The last one was on the wallet, and there is one more, I guess, but I'm forgetting the title. But yeah, we do have like series, bunch of series. So let's get started. I think we do have enough people. So let me introduce myself. I hope my internet is working. All good?
Yeah, look good on my end.
All good, all good. Okay, so welcome all of you to the series of our workshops with the third web on the Metis, and we really welcome you all to give us your time, your valuable time. We try to teach you as much as we can and help you in the development of your project, or I mean anything in your learning journey or anything. We would like to have the feedback from you as well. If you find anything, any questions or anything, feel free to drop out on the comment section as well as on the um, on yeah, you can comment on the Twitter as well, right? And we welcome you. My name is Nidhi Nakrani. I'm the developer from Metis, and today we are going to talk about custom extensions with the third web on Metis. I mean, how you can create your own custom extensions which you can use within your any tab, or I mean any project you are building in a Web3 world. So let's get started. And we welcome you, Joe, from the Third Web as a solution engineer for this amazing workshop. You're gonna dip into the creating the custom extensions on the Third Web. So let's get started. Handing over to you, Joe.
Cool, great. Thank you very much, Needy. Yeah, as you mentioned, I am Joe. I am a solutions engineer here at Thirdweb, and it is my job to help everyone who are building your applications, your businesses, scaling in Web3, get started with Thirdweb. So I'm glad to be here. Like every week, this is going to be another exciting information session for you all. Let's go ahead and get started. It's going to be all about contracts and generating extensions from them. So let me present my screen here for you all. As always, if you have seen these before, you know that I come prepared with a little bit of demo slides and all that great stuff. So let me show my window here. Let's find the presentation. Go ahead and share that. Cool.
Cool.
Beautiful. Go ahead and throw on the presentation. So, Third Web. If you haven't heard of us already before, real quick, what is Thirdweb at a high level? Who are we? What do we do? We are a full stack open source Web3 development platform. This means we have everything for your front end, your back end, and on chain development needs. This includes wallets, back end infrastructure for scaling transactions. And today's topic is going to be on chain, our contracts, and generating extensions is all going to be in this on chain bucket. So this means because we're full stack, this means that you guys have a single source where you can come in, get everything you need for your development journey. And through these series of workshops with Metis, you can actually build some really cool applications and lifelong businesses in the Web3 space, all in one source, all with one piece of tech. That's what Thirdweb is here for, and that's what we are about. And so on to today, right? It's going to be we have a lot to cover. We're going to be talking about extensions. So you might have heard this if you're familiar with Thirdweb already. You might have heard about extensions in general. You might have thought, oh, okay, I've used a few of them with some of their pre-built contracts. I might know a little bit about what they are, how they work. If you're totally new and you have absolutely no idea what an extension is, don't worry, you are in the right place. This is the workshop where we're going to go from A to Z on extensions, all the different types, all the different use cases, and this is going to be, very much focused on extensions. We're going to touch a few other pieces within our tech stack, just because it helps us describe a little bit easier what extensions are, but don't feel too afraid. Again, these sessions are recorded. Feel free to rewind and rewatch certain sections of these sessions to really understand and grasp some of these topics. And as always, if you have questions during the live stream, throw them in the chat, right? We love to see the questions and we love this to be a little bit more interactive. So if you have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat at any time. So, what are extensions, right? What is this mythical word extension, right? What does it mean in the world of Thirdweb, and how can it be used for our applications? So, extensions, pretty simple, right? I like to boil them down into three bullet points. They're precompiled, they're type safe, and they can be generated from any deployed contract. Cool. Well, what does that mean, right? I I'm still not really sure what an extension is. You've told me all the stuff that it contains, but what is an extension? So, extensions you can think of as a function that you can call from contracts in a way that means it's faster to call because they're precompiled, right? It's easier and safer to call because they're type safe. So you're not going to be passing any sort of unexpected information. And the fact that they can be deployed from generated from any deployed contract gives you flexibility. Not only can you do it from contracts that you've written, you can also create extensions from any contract on the blockchain, right? So you can go throughout the Metis blockchain and you can say, oh, you know what, I really like this person's contract, and I want to try and create some extensions from that one. You can do that as well, right? The blockchain is permissionless. It is this public ledger, and so because of that, we're able to do these really cool things like generate these extensions from any deployed contract. Really cool stuff. So let's dive a little bit deeper into what each of these three are. So precompiled, what does
So,
that look like? Go ahead.
yeah, sorry. Before we start, like, I just want to confirm that is it the smart contract that we do, right? I mean, what I can say, the the conditions for the extension is like, are we going to do deploy the smart contract?
Yeah. So for extensions, we have a couple different types, and I'll go through them. But generally, what you're going to do is you're going to have they're all built from a smart contract. So this contract has to be deployed onto the chain. Once that happens, then you can start getting these extensions out of it, right? So you can think of extensions as kind of shortcuts to how we interact with the contract. So if you're familiar with any block explorer and you go in, you look at the contract, you see all the functions listed out, and you know, okay, if I put in all of these parameters to this function list, I can interact with it. Extensions are going to be your shortcut to that, right? So instead of having to go through the block explorer and interact with them directly, and again, we'll go through this. I'll show you exactly what that looks like and how an extension will kind of cut out that step. Um, it the extension will make that process a lot easier and repeatable. So in pieces of code, what happens is we often find reusing functions a lot, right? We often find ourselves using the same piece of code in different areas of our application. And so extensions are a great way to keep your code easy to read and easy to maintain. So you don't have to keep writing these transactions over and over and over again. You can define them once through an extension and call that extension over and over. So that, yep, you're absolutely right, Needy. The contract is going to be the source and the very entry point for us generating, writing, and using all of these kinds of extensions.
Cool, cool.
Cool. So precompiled, what does that mean? Right. So this means that in our applications, and here I'll dive into our list here on the left hand side, right? We see that we have our regular file directory structure. You've seen this in a million different apps. And so in our app, you can actually see we have a directory. And in this directory called Thirdweb, we have a chain ID as well as a file. Now, this file is our pre-compiled smart contract. This means that our app doesn't have to, um, you know, infer any information. It doesn't have to try and gather any additional information on its own. It is already available within our application. Super, super handy for us. It's what allows us to create these extensions. It's what allows us to make sure we're type safe, to make sure that we can easily pass variables through. There is going to be one part where we still get our contract and pass it over, but this pre-compiling process is what helps us ensure type safety for these contract calls. So this is what it looks like when you successfully pre-compile a contract. You're going to get a file generated. And again, we'll go through this a little bit deeper, but you're going to get this file generated. It's going to show up in this directory in your application, right? So that can be a little bit of a sticky point for some people. They kind of get confused. Well, I thought a contract was totally separate from an application. They are. This is just a pre-compiled contract that we're going to use in our application to make these calls easier and faster for us. And so they're type safe, right? I've mentioned this a couple times already. What does that mean? In the world of TypeScript, right? Types are a big component. Type safe, TypeScript, type. Hope you see the correlation there. Um, this is something a core tenant, right? So this is something that is a tool developers can use to ensure that as they're calling functions, as they're passing data back and forth, they can ensure that they're passing the right kind of data. So here I have an example where I'm trying to call my extension and I'm passing in a token ID of 0 and it's telling me, "Hey, you know what? You're passing in a number," right? So in this error message you can see, "Hey, you're passing in a number, but your extension is actually expecting a big int," right? So in the world of Web3, we have things like a uint 256. So it's a big integer versus just a regular number type. So this kind of error is really helpful in that I'm now debugging before I even have to run my contract call, right? It can be a little difficult where if I'm running my contract call and I'm passing invalid information, sometimes I'll get something back from the blockchain and it'll just say failed, right? That doesn't really tell me why it failed. It doesn't really tell me any more information other than it failed. By having this precompiled and type safe structure, I can actually debug it before I even reach that point. So here I can say, okay, hey, you know what? Am I passing correct information? Yes or no? If yes, cool. I know the error might be maybe in the endpoint, the RPC endpoint, or it might be so further down the line, other than when I actually pass in that information. So it really does help you guys accelerate your maintenance of the code, right? It cuts down on the time needed to debug your applications and figure out exactly where the error is happening. So this is an example of why type safety is really cool and important here. And so finally, as we mentioned, they can be generated from any deployed contract. And what does that look like command wise? Well, you have a very simple CLI command that you can run called npx third web generate. And all you do is pass in the chain ID of your chain that you're working with, as well as the deployed contract address. Very, very simple in terms of generating these extensions. Now, we've talked a little bit about, hey, I know you can generate them, but I'm familiar with Thirdweb a little bit, and I've seen that you all offer some other types of extensions, right? So there are actually three main types of extensions that we're going to go through. So one, we have already available extensions. As you know, as part of Thirdweb's offering and product line, we have contracts. And so through these contracts, these are our base contracts in which we find solves about 90% use cases in Web3. And so with these contracts, we've already in our SDK created these extensions to work with these contracts. So these types of already available extensions are already in our SDK, and you can actually find them. And let me put the link here so that you guys can go ahead and look at them at your leisure. And so these are what we call built-in extensions. Now, our built-in extensions again cover almost our entire suite of contracts. So whether you're deploying things like regular ERC 721s, right? We have a whole list of extensions to help you with that. Maybe you're working with the marketplace contract. We have extensions for that. Maybe you're deploying contracts on behalf of other people, right? We also have a lot of extensions for that. So I would urge everyone to go through, excuse me, to go through this list and find out all of the extensions that are available to you. And, just let's not get stuck in like tutorial in this tutorial pain point. You can actually use this list and hone in on the standards that you're using. So, and what I mean by that is, hey, I want to look at this list. How do I use it? So I'm building a ERC 721 uh, app where I am dropping some NFT tokens. What are the extensions I need? So instead of having to go through all of these lists, you can just go bam right here, ERC 721, click this link and see all of the extensions available to you. Really, really handy and easy to access through this list here. And so next up, we have writing your own, right? So yes, we have extensions that are available and we have extensions that you can generate from a contract. But you can also just write your own extensions. And so what this does is this allows you to define exactly how you want your contract calls to be done. And again, it's all about how can I cut down on my code so that way I can make it easier to maintain, I can make it faster to develop and repeatable, right? So here's an example of writing your own extension. This is using our ERC 721 Mint 2. Um, and so this is essentially what you call when someone comes in and wants to mint a token, right? So let's kind of break down a little bit on how this works because it's going to help us when we start generating these extensions and we can see what's happening on the back end when we start generating them from the contract code itself. So here, very top, very basic imports that we have, we are actually going to use some previous or other functionality that we can use, like for example, prepare contract call. These are, if you're familiar with our SDK, this is how we interact with contracts normally, right? And so in this call, what we do is we pass in our contract, and then as you see here, we pass in on method the fully defined function. And by fully defined, I mean it has, that it's a function, not an interface or anything else. It's a function. We pass in the name of the function. We pass in the parameters of the function as well as the types, right? So here you can notice that we're having to define all of this within our code when we're writing them, and it can be, depending on the function, it can be pretty messy. I've seen contracts where they have functions with 10 different inputs on them, right? So that means 10 different input names and 10 different input types that you have to write every single time you wanted to call that function, right? So through an extension, you only have to do that once. And now, anytime you want someone to mint to your NFT, all they have to do is call this mint to extension that you've created, and they're good to go, right? So we've defined what method we're calling. We've defined, and here we can say, hey, these are the parameters that we're passing into. This one's going to be, in this case, this is our token URI, which is our metadata uh, file that we upload to IPFS, and then we're able to go on with our token mint. So th- you can see here how this block of code being written only once versus multiple times over and over makes it so much easier to maintain. If there was ever an issue, I know I can go to this one source, debug that issue, and I'm good to go, right? I don't have to make that same change 10 different times in my app, nor do I have to worry about any updates or changes across my different apps, right? I can use this same extension as well. So writing extensions, as you can see here, it's all about how do I utilize my contract calls? How do I put in all of my fully defined qualified function, right? Name, type, and and function name as well, and as well as any parameters that we're passing through, right? So that's what it looks like to write your own. But we have another way. So we have something called generating extensions. And so generating extensions is all about, hey, I have a contract and I want to make some functions from this contract, right? Maybe my contract has a whole bunch of custom code, has a whole bunch of custom functionality, and so it's stuff that Thirdweb doesn't support out of the box. And I don't really want to have to go through the hassle of writing all of these prepare contract calls over and over for all of my functions. How do I streamline this even further, and it's going to be through generating. So this is what it looks like code wise when we start generating contracts. Again, we're going to go through a bit of a demo here and build our own contracts. I'll walk you through what each piece is, and then as well as here when we generate. If you notice at the top, our import statements, we've changed from calling things like prepare contract call, and we're actually importing our precompiled contract. Remember, I showed you that directory that was generated, and then it had our contract in it. This is what that looks like. So we're actually using our precompiled contract here to to facilitate the creation of these extensions. Now, if you notice here, we still have to get the contract object from our SDK, and this is just so that we can actually tell our application what contract we're working with. Again, pre-compiling contracts is all about type safety and ensuring that we are passing in the right parameters to our contract. So while we get this contract object from our SDK. Further down, once we start implementing our extensions, once we start actually writing them out, it's going to, again, as I showed earlier, it's going to allow us to ensure that we're passing in the proper types and that we don't have to define each and every single property within it. If I'm missing a property, guess what? Visual Studio Code will pop up and say, hey, we're expecting this property. You've only sent one argument, we're expecting two, right? Things like that. So it really does help. And as you can see, just from these two screenshots, right, you can see the amount of code here needed when you're writing our own and versus the amount of code here needed when generating it from our contracts. So that's a little bit about contracts extensions. That's at a high level point. Any questions? Feel free to put them in the chat because now I want to make sure that we're all on the same page and have a good understanding because next up is going to be a demo. And this demo we're going to build, we have about half an hour. So we're going to build from ground up. I'm going to show you an empty project and we're going to go ahead and build out this demo. I already have everything set up. So if anywhere along the way anything happens, I can still show you exactly what to do and how to move forward. So any questions? We're good to proceed.
Yep, yep. I think so. We are good to proceed. I don't see any comments in the comment
All
sections.
right, cool.
Yeah,
No
cool.
worries. Cool. So this is going to be a really interesting one because again, we're diving into extensions, right? We're diving into the contract where the previous um, episodes, right, as you call them, is we stay pretty high level. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change my screen here, and I'm going to share. Let's see. I'm going to share my Visual Studio here. There we go. Cool. Everyone can see this, hopefully. Yep. Cool. Now, here is very simply my setup in Visual Studio. I have uh, a workshop directory that I've created. And so, first up, what we need to do is we need to create our contract, right? Extensions connect to contracts, and contracts are our source of truth here. So, here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do very simple npx Thirdweb create. And so, this is going to be our helper tool to create these kind of tools, whether it's contracts, extensions, or even apps. So what we're going to do is we're going to first create our contract, right? Let's go ahead and create a contract, and this one I'm going to name it adoption contract or adoption project. Rather, let's name it adoption project. And so we actually support two frameworks when creating contracts. This one's going to be Hard Hat or Forge. In my case, I'm going to use Hard Hat. We're going to name our smart contract. So this one's going to be adoption contract. And so we have a couple different options here. We can either, I'm actually going to make this bigger, see if I can zoom in as well for you all. Cool. So we have a couple different options when creating our contract, right? We can start totally from scratch. We can have an empty contract. We can add all of our, um, libraries, all of our imports manually. Totally fine. We can start from some of our popular base contracts, right? ERC 721, 20, or 1155. For this demo, I'm going to do 721. I like it. I find it's the most commonly used across our contract stack. So that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to use an ERC 721 contract. And even within 721, we have different options, right? So we have things like signature mint, where individuals can only mint if they have a valid signature. We have lazy mint if you only want to use this contract to initially put up all of the token information. Very useful for NFT collection type contracts, where you have maybe a whole bunch of different projects in one collection versus separating each project out by collection. Delayed reveal, where if you need to have all of your metadata hidden before you want to release it to the world. And finally, what we're going to use is drop. This is one of my most favorite and easiest to work with contracts. So we're going to go ahead and select drop. And so what it's doing is it's actually downloading all of our files from our npm repo, and then we're going to use it to create our NFT drop contract. Panga, hello, man. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. You have come just in time. We're just creating our contract here. And so what's going to happen is on the left-hand side, you can actually see under adoption project, right? This is our contract. You can actually see it's done quite a few things. So we've created our contract, right? Go ahead and move that. We've created our contract. So in this case, we now have this lovely, boop, we now have this lovely contract. This in itself is a very uh basic contract. If I were to deploy this, it would work, right? And so, what's going on in this contract? What are some of the ins and outs that we might need to know about? So, we're making this contract, and we're actually saying, hey, you're inheriting from ERC 721 drop, which is being imported from here. So, ERC 720 drop, if you're familiar with it, has quite a few things in terms of its constructor, right? So we have default admin, and this is all the stuff you expect as you deploy contracts from the dashboard. It asks you for all of these things, right? It asks you, hey, what who's the creator of this contract, right? Who do you want to be able to have access to it? Who's the default? You recognize that we put that names, symbols, primary sales recipient. All of these are questions that should be familiar to you if you ever deployed a contract through the dashboard. This is how it gets there. This is how the dashboard recognizes it, right? So it's pretty cool once you start making those kinds of connections. So in terms of our our little demo here, what we're going to do is we're going to do two things. One, we are going to create some events, right? Because extensions, not only are they applying to functions, but you can also apply them to events as well. So we're going to be doing some events, and I want this to be an adoption contract. So some one of my functionality is after a user has minted a token, after a user has minted a token, I want them to be have the option to adopt it. And the adoption is all it's going to do is it's going to update the status on the contract itself. Hey, this token is now adopted. And so we have a question like, could you explain simply how it'd be useful for the common average user? Use these extensions are useful in terms of cutting down time it takes to develop, cutting down time you spend maintaining code, and just making it faster interacting with your contracts. Right. So if you are a individual who's developing these apps and you're interacting with contracts in your apps as one does in Web3, extensions are going to make it faster for you. It's going to make it easier for you through this entire process. So let's go ahead and get started modifying this base contract. So first up, I want to map, right? So here I'm going to map adoption. I want to map adoption status to token ID, right? And so to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to actually do a mapping, right? So again, if you've built contracts before, this shouldn't be too crazy. But essentially, what we're doing is we're saying, hey, I want to map a token ID of this type. This is the big int type, and I want to say whether it has been adopted, yes or no, right? So in this token ID is going to have a variable is adopted. And we're going to decide. We're going to map whether that token ID has been adopted, true or false. Very simple. So after that, that's what's going to allow us to track mapping. But if you're familiar with events, these are things that, hey, once a certain function is called, we can actually on the blockchain emit a signal, right? We can showcase a signal that says, hey, function has been called. Here is the event for that function, right? So for this one, we're going to actually define our adoption event, right? So this is going to be what we broadcast on the network that after we call our adoption function. So for that one, it's going to be called adoption adopted, right? So we're going to make an event we're gonna call it adopted, and what it's going to broadcast is the token ID as well as the individual who has adopted that token, right? So it's going to showcase two things: the token ID of which one are we adopting, and then hey, who is the individual who is adopting this token, right? Pretty cool stuff here. So after that, let's go ahead and define our function.
We do have one question
Go ahead.
from someone like, hi, please, how would you explain simply how it would be useful for the common average user?
Yeah, yeah. So, Ristic, like I mentioned before, this is going to be useful for anyone who's building applications that are interacting with contracts um, at any level, really, right? So, it's going to speed up your development time. It's going to ensure that you are calling these functions in a type safe manner and very quickly. And then again, maintenance wise, you don't have to spend a lot of time maintaining these contract calls because we are ensuring that these precompiled contracts are type safe, as well as ensuring that we've already passing all of our parameters versus passing them, getting some ambiguous error message back from our endpoints. We cannot make sure that all of that is handled before that call. So average use case user is going to be speed up development, lower maintenance costs, nothing but positives here. So cool. Now let's define our function. I'm going to go ahead and copy it here, paste it. I've done this before already, so let's walk through a little bit on what this does. So here I have a function, and I'm calling this adopt token. And again, we're still working on our contract. So in my contract, at the contract level, I have this adopt token function. And so what we're going to do is we're going to pass in a token ID for this function. And what we're saying is, hey, only the person who owns this token is able to complete this adoption status. So if the person who owns this token comes in and selects this adopt token function and it works with it, it's going to turn that value that we've set up here, right? Remember this mapping, it's going to turn this is adopted value from false to true. And so once that happens, we're going to go ahead and emit. Again, emit is just broadcasting to the network that, hey, an adopted event has happened for this token ID with this sender, with this wallet address, right? Very simple stuff. And that's going to be our very basic contract. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And so with this very basic contract, we have everything we need for generating extensions. Now, first off, we need to deploy this contract. And so to do that, we're going to do a couple things. First, we're going to do a real quick, if we actually I'll show you the README here. If we go through this README, after we've done making our edits, making our changes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run yarn build. You can do this in npm or yarn. Let's cd into our project first, and that should do it. Cool. And now I can run yarn build. And so what it's going to do is it's going to actually build our contract information. You'll see here we'll have quite a bit of, or well, not quite a bit, we'll have a few added files from Hardhat as we compile this code and this contract. Yep, there it is. And so after this, we're going to actually be able to deploy, right? So, hey, you've built your contracts, you finished writing them. Let's go ahead and deploy. I use Yarn. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to deploy this. However, deploys, use your secret key in your API key pair on Thirdweb. So I'm actually going to go ahead and move this over. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a second. So that way, as I write my command, it's going to deploy our contract. Again, as you saw, it's just a yarn deploy. And then you're going to do a -k flag and then type in your secret key. So once this leaves my console, I'll go ahead and reshare my screen for you all. So that way you can see exactly what is happening and exactly where um, we'll be able to view our contract. So, okay, here we go. Let me now share my screen. And if your secret key ever does get exposed, this is your API secret key. Again, we're not exposing wallet private keys. Huge, huge plus there. And if your secret key does get exposed, you can actually rotate these out within our dashboard. So that is going to be helpful for you as well. I'm going to share my entire screen here, in which case, let me move my toolbar. We're going to, yep, automatically hide. Cool. And then I'm going to share my entire screen here with you all. Make sure it's the right one. Yep, that's it. Cool. So here, yep, you can see it again. Here we have this link. Now this link, if I were to copy and paste, right? So now that I've deployed the contract, it's actually put it up onto a link that we can access. So if you were to copy that link, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go into our tab. And so here, I'm going to paste that link. And so if you notice, we're now working with our adoption contract. And again, remember, we have all of these kinds of informations that we're used to seeing when deploying through the dashboard. So here, I'm just going to go ahead and open my wallet, copy my address, and say, "Hey, that's the address that I want our recipient things to go to. What do I want to call this? I'm going to call this Metis Adoption Demo Contract, right? And MADC. For the symbol. Let's just do that MADC. What channel are we working with? In this case, I love working on the Metis testnet. So Metis deploy testnet it is. And I'll go ahead and deploy this. Now, as you notice, we're starting to deploy it onto our dashboard. If you are familiar with it, this is the exact same flow. I've created my custom contract. I'm deploying it onto the dashboard and the network that I'm using. Now I'm just signing this gasless transaction to add it to my dashboard so I can easily find it later. Mm, We're going to let this grow. Cool. So let's go ahead and view our contract now. And just like that, we now have our contract that we've deployed, right? We've built this out. Now, how do I know that this is the actual contract that we're working with? So if I go to sources here, if you notice, we actually have this adoption contract.sol. And so if I scroll down, hey, look at that. It's our code. This is the mapping that we've created and our function that we've created, even our emitting of an event, right? So this is indeed our contract that we've created. And we can actually start doing things like, as you would expect, hey, maybe I want to start uploading NFTs to this, right? So what's happening here is it's actually identifying the extensions available to us. And so as you saw, these buttons that just loaded in, it the dashboard said, "Hey, I know that you can do some uploads. Let's go ahead and apply these buttons so that you can use it from the GUI as super simply, right? So let's go ahead and do an upload here. I'm going to do a single upload. I'm going to call this dog one, and I'll upload some images. Which dog are we feeling here? I like this hand drawn one, but this guy with the glasses is pretty cool too. Let's go with him. Let's go with this famous dog here. So this is the dog that we're gonna put up for to mint as an NFT. So we'll go ahead and lazy mint this. It's gonna pop up a transaction for you to sign. I'll go ahead and sign this. And so there we go. We've lazy minted an NFT our uh, onto our contract, right? So again, lazy mint is it's not actually minted. The metadata is up and out for everyone to use. Now, what we need to do is we need to start before we claim. We need to add some claim conditions. So, claim conditions are things like, hey, who can mint, how many can they mint, all this great stuff. And since we wrote it in our contract, I'm actually going to show you what it looks like to set these claim conditions from writing to the contract directly. So here I actually have the claim conditions already. So one, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you some common mistakes and some things that people miss. So here, first things first, it has to be in JSON. So when I look at these claim conditions, I notice I have square brackets instead of curly braces. So one, I'm going to do that. Put in our curly braces. Oops. There we go. Next up is it has to be in JSON format. So what does that mean? That means there has to be a valid key pair. So if you notice here, I've only put in the values of each section when I actually need things like start timestamp, right? So it has to be something like this. Start timestamp, right? And then we're going to do max claimable supply. This is going to be how we define, hey, anyone can anyone can claim the highest number ever, right? Um, we're not limiting our claim in that one. We're going to define how many have already been claimed when we create this claim condition. In our case, it's 0. We're going to say, okay, how many are we allowing to claim per wallet? Again, we're going to do the maximum amount. I want people to be able to claim as many as they want. This is going to be a free public mint. So that means that our Merkle root, because it is um, not we're not having an allow list or anything. It's going to be an empty Merkle root. If you do have one and allow list, you can actually use our SDK to build that. Price per token, again, this is free. What is the currency we're using? We're going to be using our native token here. And finally, any additional metadata that you want during this claim condition. So when I put this in, you notice the red goes away and I can actually simulate this transaction. There it is. Great. We're going to go ahead and execute to add this claim condition. We'll go ahead and confirm this. Cool. And so now that that claim condition is in, I can go ahead and actually claim my NFT to a user, right? So if I come in here, again, I can write to our function and I'm just going to go ahead and claim it to my wallet. So the receiver is going to be me. I'm going to do one NFT. The currency again is going to be our native token, which is this here. The price is 0. And then this allow list proof is going to be a default. So if you guys are working with, public no allow list, no token currencies to kind of stuff. You can copy and paste this proof here, and then data is going to be just 0x00 as well. So we'll go ahead and execute this. You'll see a transaction pop up. I'll confirm this in my wallet. And boom, success. We have now minted our NFT. We'll go here, double check. It is now in my wallet. Cool. That's the setup. We've done our contract. We've built our contract. We've set up our NFT. Now let's get into the cool stuff. Let's start generating our contracts and start generating our um our sorry, our contract extension. So here, what we're gonna do now is I'm actually gonna clear my console here. And so here, we're gonna use this in an app. I know we're coming up on time here, so we're gonna be really quick here. I'm gonna add a new folder, and I'm gonna call this folder the adoption app, right? And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually cd into this app folder adoption app. And so again, we're going to use npx thirdweb create, and it's going to help us with that app creation process. Again, this is going to make it super easy and streamlined for us to create these apps. I want to create an app. I'm going to call it adoption app. It's going to be Next.js because I love Next.js. And we're going to wait for this to kind of go through and create that application for us. It's going to mess with the file structure, all of that great stuff. And so you'll see from our initial structure how it changes once we start importing our extensions, right? So here we're going to let this kind of finish loading. I see some new chatters in the chat. Dusa TR. Hey man, how are you? Glad to see you here. Um, we see Christian Schmier. Say hi to V's mom. Hi V's. Hi V's mom. How are you? Cool. So there is there's our app. And so I'm actually going to CD into our app that we've just created here, which is going to be this. And as you notice, hey, very simple app, pretty cool. We have things like pages. This directory structure is super familiar to us. And what we're going to do is I'm actually going to go into our page, and we're just going to get rid of all that stuff right there, right? All of these default stuff that Thirdweb is nice enough to provide. Thank you, but I don't need it. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to save that. And then now, how do we generate our extension, right? So how do we start that process? It's going to be pretty simple. One, npx thirdweb generate, and again, it's going to be the chain ID. In our case, it's going to be 59902, the beautiful Metis Sepolia test note. And then what we're going to do is we're going to access slash, and we're going to add in our actual contract address. So our contract, if we go back here and take a look at it, we can copy our address, right? We're going to go back into our code. We're going to paste it there. And now we're going to go ahead and hit enter. And so as we're generating this contract, we are going to see source page. Let's fix some of these errors here. Let's add our prettier 08714. Cool. Here we go. So we actually have this directory that has been created for us, and this is our precompiled contract, right? I've run the npx startup generate. It created this directory. We saw it wasn't there before. It created this directory, and here is the contract again with our adoption events that we've created. And not only that, but it has all of the other all of the other functions and kind of functionality that we've had from that base contract as well. So this is it. This is everything. This shows all of our extension functionality, and we've just generated a really neat uh, not the extension itself, but we've just generated a precompiled version of our smart contract. Really, really cool stuff. So as you can see here, this is our regular contract. We don't need this anymore. We're gonna actually go ahead and remove it so we don't get confused. This is our precompiled one. Cool. And so how do we start using it? Right? How do we start working with this information? So one, we need to import it, right? So I'm actually going to go ahead and open it up again. We need to import it. We're working with adopt token and adopt event, right? These are the contracts these are the functions and the events that we've created. So first up, we need to import. So we're going to actually import um, these contracts here. This is a old address, so let's go ahead and get the new one here. Again, we're going to copy that ID. We're going to go ahead and paste that address in here. And so here, adopt token is declared but never read. Fine by me for now. Not only do we need the function, right? This is the function that actually generates that token, the adoption event, but we also need the event, right? So again, we're going to go ahead and mess with that there. Cool. And that's it. Import wise, we're good to go, right? So I actually have I know we're running out of time, so I actually have another demo that I've created before this, knowing that this might happen. So here we actually have the exact same code, right? We have, if you look here on our left hand side, we can see Thirdweb was generated, and here we have our contracts that we've imported as well. And so I've created a little app that, as I click buttons, it's going to help me adopt uh, update the adoption status through our contract. So what does it look like to start working with these imports, right? So for one, I have a button in my code, right? So I have a button here, and hey, click to adopt your buddy. Simple button. Now, in this button, I'm actually utilizing this function, and this function is is what's going to create and utilize the extensions that we've just generated from our contract. So again, first up, we're going to get our contract, and this is going to be from our client, what chain we're working with, and what's the address of our contract. And then here is where we utilize our generated function from our contract, right? Really cool stuff. Like you can see here, oh, I'm adopting a token now. We generated that function that was in our contract, right? This adopted token function. And now, as you can see, we're passing in our token ID and we're passing in the contract object that we get. If I were to say 0 instead of 0 in, oh, hey, you know what? You need a token. The token ID is of the wrong value. It should be a big int, not a number. Oh, well, hey, thanks, man. And then if I were to say, hey, you know what? I'm just gonna I'm gonna purely pass in a token. My IDE is gonna tell me, hey, you know what? We're actually not only are we expecting a token of beginning, but we're also looking for a contract, right? So again, we've already debugged this in two different areas, right? The type of information we're passing, as well as the arguments that we're passing in. And so before, when I was showcasing that the perform contract call, right? When you're first preparing prepare contract calls, you can do this directly now. Now I can just say, hey, I want to adopt this token. And so now every time I click this button, to adopt, right? To click to adopt your buddy. Every time I click that button, it's actually gonna go in, interact with my contract, and say, hey, for token ID 0, I want you to update the status for that token. And of course, you know, in a working app, you'll have this auto filled, maybe from a user who signed in, or maybe you'll have a user type in their token ID, right? A whole bunch of different ways you can do this. But for this demo, I'm just going to say token ID 0 and is going to be my extension that I'm using. So, what does this look like in a demo version, right? So, I'm actually going to pull this out. Here is the demo from that app that I made, right? And so, if I were to click to adopt your buddy, what this is going to do is two things. It's going to, in this view, this is our adoption contract, right? This is the one I've made before. Exactly the same way. Every step that I've showed you is exactly the same way. I've changed nothing. This is just so I didn't have to go through building the app again. in this session. So here you can see a list of events, right? I've seen some token claims, some adopted events, I've seen some claim conditions. Cool. If I were to click to adopt your buddy, right, it's going to have this transaction and we're interacting with our contract. And once I hit confirm here, it's going to go through and I'll actually check in my wallet. I'll say, hey, oh, look, contract came through on the first. Cool. When I go back here into my Explorer tab, I see this adopted event. I see that that function has happened and that token has been adopted. But remember I also said, hey, not only can you do this with functions, but you can also use this for events. And so what do I mean by that? So as you see here, this adopted event was emitted and that was from our contract, right? So I'll actually pull up our contract again. That was from our contract. I said, when I go into my function and I use this adopt, I want to showcase that an adopted event has happened. And that's exactly what we saw, right? We saw that adopted event when it was clicked through. So that is really great for us. Let's go ahead and go back to this one. Um, and so now what about events, right? Like if I want to start working with events, how does that look? Same deal. We can define our contract. Again, you can extrapolate this out so it's only a single item. But then we can define, okay, I want to be able to get my contract events and I want to get my adopted event. This is the event that I've created in my contract. This is my custom event. I want to be able to see what that looks like. So in this little code snippet, all it's going to do is it's going to again get our contract first, and then we're going to utilize get contract events. Guess what? This is an extension in itself. You can group multiple extensions together in a single function. So that way, with like you see here, right? We see get contract, and then we are getting another one, right? You can group multiple extensions in a single function. So that way as users click these calls, it makes it even easier for you to maintain this code. It makes it even easier for you to develop. So a lot of possibilities here. Really cool stuff. And so I'm saying, hey, I want to get the contract events for this contract from this block number to the latest block, and I want to look at my adopted event. So every time I click that button, I want to get that event list. And so from an app perspective, what does that look like? If I were to click on recent adoptions here, I actually have written out, oh, hey, here's the recent adoptions. Here's the individual who adopted. Um, cool, right? Like this is our event. You can see how powerful this is. You now have a ready-made list of adoptions and events. Now, let's say you don't believe me. Real quick, I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect to this wallet. I'm actually gonna switch. I'll disconnect from here as well, just so make sure everything is as believed. And I'm gonna switch to a new account. And so for this account, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to MetaMask, sign back in. And so, hey, I want to adopt under this account, right? I have a buddy. My buddy is currently not adopted, and I want to adopt him. So if we go back to this Explorer, we see that dog number 2 is owned by OX05. We're going to go ahead and click to adopt my buddy. And so what this is going to do is this is going to pull up the transaction. Should what did I break here? Adoption failed. Must own the token. Oh, I have the wrong. So this is actually a good use case. So remember we put in that require permission for the token ownership. Yeah, this is why we did that, so that someone can't come in and just say, "Hey, I want to adopt someone." Um, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go, "Hey, let's go back to our app real quick." And in this adoption event, remember I hard coded it at 0. We're gonna do 1. Save that. We're gonna reload here. Cool. Now that we reloaded, we're gonna click to adopt my buddy. It's gonna pull up my transaction, and now I can say, "Oh, I am the owner of this token. I can now complete the adoption process." Really cool, right? Like we just saw it in action. Why it's important to have these require statements. So really cool to see that something we put into our contract has shown up. Really cool stuff.
Yeah.
And so if we go back into our event, we see, hey, there was an adoption event on block number 2394595, right? And then if we go back, what were our recent adoptions? We see this new adopted event right here, right? You can see the adopter is of this new address, and we have actually the block hash of this new adoption event. And so we've done it. We've utilized extensions in our code, and we've utilized it in our app. We were showcasing what it looks like to adopt these tokens, and by setting that flag and the events emitted from that function. And so that is how easy it is to generate extensions and work with all of these pieces of code that you write and bring into your app, right? So this is a lot easier than this. Let me show you here. It's a lot easier than this, right? Here you can see I'm putting in everything. I need the token ID. I need uh, the type of that token ID, and I also have to again pass in all the parameters, right? I have to call this prepare contract call, and this is shorter than what it would have been from a regular transaction. But with extensions, as you can see, it's even shorter than that, right? It's even shorter. So um, this is the power of extensions. This is how you can create them, right? First, create your contract. Second, deploy the contract. Third, generate the extension, and finally, call it in your app. Simple, easy, right? And that's it. That is our demo on extensions. I hope you have seen it. Any questions, Needy? What do you think about this?
Oh, it's really amazing. I mean, I don't see any questions related to this in the chat box, so I really hope that it's going good for all of us.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as always, if you have any questions, put them in the YouTube video, right?
Yeah,
Put them in the YouTube video. Metis will come look at it. Metis will tag me to come look at it. I'll be looking at the comments myself as well
yeah,
from Thirdweb. Um, Post your comments, questions, come to the Discord channels, interact with us, talk with us, ask your questions. Extensions are going to be your best friend as you
definitely.
interact.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are all available on the Telegram mostly for any support. If you need any support from Matis or a Thirdweb, we are available
Yep.
on the Metis developers group. So feel free to reach out there as well if you have any questions in the future. All good for now. Are we done with the third demo and presentation?
Yeah, yeah. That's my end to end. We've generated our extensions and I've shown you how to use in an application. Um, I want you guys to go out and create your own extensions. I want you
Yeah.
guys to create your own contracts.
Yeah, go and create your own custom extension and share it on the Twitter. Don't forget to mention Thirdweb and Metis test. So we would like to amplify your the idea that what you have done, and we would like to see the response from you as well, that we are doing the workshops for you, so that you learn more and more about the third web and the Metis, and um, we got to know what you are developing as well, right? So all good. Thank you so much all of you for joining, for giving us a time. That I can see that almost 750 people are watching right now, so that's amazing number once again. So yeah, we will be continuing our workshop next week, probably on the Thursday or Friday. See you on the next week. Until then, take care. Goodbye. If you have any questions, don't forget to reach out us on the Telegram.
Cool. Thank you, everyone. Happy
Thank you,
building.
everyone. Thank you, Joe, as well, for this amazing workshop.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you so much. Ending the stream now. Bye bye.